Hey everyone, Dave here with another reaction video. Today I'm going to be reacting to an awesome video on YouTube. It's called World War II in Europe Every Day by Emperor Tigerstar. And when I went through my obsessive phase about World War II, which lasted a while and I still don't know if I'm quite out of it yet, I kind of watched this video over and over and over again because it finally hit me after all these years of my life where I've heard about World War II, just how intense it was and how it changed, the war changed on just in a short amount of time within the Eastern Front in Russia, and how it changed D-Day and things like that. And every time I watched this, I found more and more that I hadn't seen before. And then you combine that with the music that he chose for it, everything just kind of is awesome about it. So I wanted to watch it with you guys and point out the things that I notice when I watch it. So hope you enjoy. World War II in Europe Every Day. Partisan forces are not official army or military, but rather more civilian type militia. See, this goes fast. That's why you gotta pause it sometimes. So we already have the Nazis invading Poland from the west, and then the Russians invading Poland from the east, and then meeting at the middle. This, of course, is after the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, where they are supposedly neutral with each other, and this was a way for Hitler to shore up the Eastern Front before he kind of shored up the Western Front, and before he could then go back east towards Russia. And by the way, poor Poland. The more I read about this time period in World War II, the more I realized just how Poland was just caught in the middle of these two empires, these two superpowers, Russia and Germany, and two empires that obviously didn't have any sort of sympathy for Poland, and just totally used them for their own purposes in invading and just wiped out Poland. And you know, by 1945, it just Warsaw in particular, you see pictures of it, it's just blown to pieces, and Stalin himself, as Russia's invading back east, shows no mercy for the Polish people. But that, of course, is, in this timeline, it's still 6 years later. Got a little bit of time here where not much is happening, but pretty soon you'll see you got stuff going up in the north with Finland and Russia. But pretty soon you'll see when Hitler decides to get some more resources and go up through the Scandinavian countries here. See, there it is, there he goes. And it's also about this time that, oh wow, that happened so fast. But the British failure to stop the Nazis up in Scandinavia actually leads to Neville Chamberlain, who is known for his famous Peace for Our Time speech when he got back from the Munich conference, and supposedly had stopped, through a treaty, had stopped Hitler from invading the rest of Czechoslovakia and giving him the Sudetenland. Chamberlain's known for this speech when he comes back to London and he lands on his plane, and supposedly he has peace in our time, and it's becomes a punchline because just, you know, really soon after that the major war breaks out. But here it's his partly due to his failure to stop the Nazis from invading Scandinavia that Winston Churchill takes over as Prime Minister in Britain. And I paused it, and I'm a little off already, but a little slowed down. I didn't quite catch it already, but you can see that we're already in May of 1940, and Hitler has invaded France, and and through the Ardennes, and something that wasn't expected, and through Blitzkrieg, which is the mechanized warfare of tanks charging ahead and then infantry coming in afterwards. He was able to surprise everyone in this sort of lightning attack and was able to conquer France really easily, which we'll see here in a second. He drives the French armies and the British expeditionary force that was there to Dunkirk, and then drives south. And of course, Dunkirk is also a famous movie that it plays out the scene of the British soldiers escaping back to England from Dunkirk, where they were trapped by the Germans. So they got Dunkirk, and now they're heading south, and just like that, France falls. And there's this famous picture where Hitler is in the same train car where where Germany signed the armistice with the Allied forces in World War One, the Allies in World War One, and now it's Hitler in the car getting his revenge, doing something that no one thought could be done, and that is conquering France, which, you know, if you compare it to World War One, the Germans made some gains through the Schlieffen Plan going through Luxembourg and Belgium, but they got stopped, and then of course we got trench warfare, and everything just bogged down for years and years and years. And here, within a tiny amount of time, Hitler, using Blitzkrieg, just wipes out France. And he signs this, the French surrender to Germany in that same train car, which was a sort of poetic justice in Hitler's mind to do it in the same. He had to actually get the train car out, and took a lot of effort just to get it out, just so he could do this. And then Hitler visits Paris, the first time he had ever been to Paris, and there's famous pictures of him doing this right after they conquer France, and the whole world now is on notice. And like, what is going on? How did this happen? In America, there is big debates going on. Should America get involved? Of course, Churchill wants America to come in to play to help out, because next up is Hitler wants to take out Britain. And there's this Operation Sea Lion, which was going to be Germany's invasion of Britain. But the Battle of Britain starts, and British makes a historic stand that really changes the war, because they stop Hitler from wiping out Britain. The Royal Air Force steps up in a big way. And fights off the Luftwaffe, which is the German airplanes, German Air Force, and Hitler is forced to sort of give up on taking out Britain, and he never does, which then, you know, sets up the possibility of D-Day in the long run, because Britain is never taken out. But next soon, there's going to be more of a lull, because it's not until 1941, June of 1941, a year after this point, that Operation Barbarossa happens, when Germany invades Russia. And you'll see also that the Axis powers start trying to take out the Balkans too, all the way down to Greece. And there's some important things that happen with that, and I'll explain that in a second. And of course, all this stuff is also happening in Africa too, and I don't know that quite as well, so I'm not going to comment as much on that. You have Operation Torch, where that's a little bit later, again, where America gets involved. But that's important for the Allies, because then that gives them access to enter through Italy, what Churchill famously called the soft underbelly of the Nazi Empire. And it allows them to put pressure on Germany from more than just the West, but also from the South. one of the reasons you tend to see lulls in the fall and winter is that it's harder to fight in the cold weather. That's one of the reasons. So I see countries like Romania, Bulgaria, it's taking sides. This is important that Britain was able to land in Greece. This ends up sort of delaying, this is debatable, but it ends up hurting Hitler's efforts in Barbarossa, him having to deal with the British in Greece. And here's a lot of stuff happening in Africa, like I said. The Allies taking back some of the Axis. Yugoslavia is neutral, but then, okay, there it is. So see, this is, the spring of 41, the Axis is called the Balkan Campaign, where Italy was supposed to take care of most of it. Hitler had always was going to back them up, but Italy didn't do as well as they had wanted, and so Hitler, uses some of his forces to help clean up the Balkan Campaign, which then affects, some people say it delays Operation Barbarossa, which is the Nazi invasion of Russia. Some people say it delays that to the point where then they get so bogged down in the winter that it eventually fails. Some people might have hinted that it might have been more successful if it had started earlier. Some of the stuff we'll never know, but I always find that interesting. So pretty soon here, you're gonna see Operation Barbarossa start happening. I mean, I love the music change right here. I know this is all public domain music, but it's really great. There it is. Man, I can't get over this. Whenever I watch this, you see the scale of this invasion. You know how many miles that is from the Baltic all the way down to the South Russia here, to the Black Sea, and of course there's 3 army groups north, center, and south that Germany invades. And again, it's just, at this point, it's how can you stop them? And this is why the whole world is scared of what's going on. It's blitzkrieg. It's this lightning war where the tanks punch ahead and the infantry falls behind. And the other thing that you can't see, of course, with these moving lines on the screen is, and this is something that as I read more about it, it was just hard to read about. But behind the line, you have the Nazi Einsatzgruppen, and I'm not pronouncing that well, but it's basically the Jew hunters and the Jew killers, where you have, their goal is literally to wipe out Jews. And supposedly it's to make sure that the cities that Nazis conquer don't, get in the way of the Nazi rule, of the troops that are pushing forward, is to keep things under control. But in reality, what that means, keeping things under control, is massive lines of Jews being shot and buried in ditches. And of course, then you start getting the concentration camps set up, and it is just brutal slaughter. And you hear stories about Nazi soldiers using drugs and drinking alcohol just to cope with all of this. And because it's just such brutality, and just, again, the weight of this, as I read this, I just can't believe this actually happened. And you can't see it, obviously, with the lines just moving here on the screen, but to have the context of it and to know what's actually happening, it is really sad. But one thing is a good point to pause it, is you see this little circle here with the blue in the middle. That was a way of fighting where the military would outflank the enemy, surround them, and then they would force them to surrender. So you get massive amounts of prisoners of war that way. And you'll see that as this goes on, you'll see these little circles pop up and then they disappear, and that's when there's these prisoners of war. In the north already, by July here, you have the Nazis close to St. Petersburg. At this point, it's not St. Petersburg, it's Petrograd. And that's Stalingrad is the famous battle that comes out of this. Petrograd is also brutal because the whole city was surrounded and they choked off their supplies, and the local citizens are freezing to death in the winter and starving, but they hold out. So we'll keep it going. See some more of those circles, and at this point, Hitler's goal is to reach Moscow and to wipe out the Russians before winter. That's kind of become a meme because of the history of it, but generals always underestimated how massive Russia is, and they always were overconfident that they could take them out before, and they always underestimate how cold it gets and how that really cuts down on mobility and supply lines and troop morale, because it just goes on and on and on, just how big it is and how cold it is. Napoleon famously wasn't able to do this, and now you'll see Hitler is also not able to do it. His goal was to knock them out before winter, but he gets close, honestly. But you'll see how it kind of bogs down here this fall of 41 into the winter of 41. So Army Group Center is getting close to Moscow, but it doesn't quite make it. Supposedly they could see Moscow in the distance, one person said. Russia holds, and that's a big point in the war right there. Russia holds. They kind of a bit of a counter, and then it kind of pauses here for the winter of 42. As you can hear in the background, you can hear Roosevelt with his famous speech before Congress. This is right after Pearl Harbor, which is December of 41. And this, of course, brings America into the war. Hitler declares war on America, which was funny because, as Victor Davis Hanson said, and again, one of my favorite historians, can you really imagine the Nazis invading New York City at this point? I don't know, it's just kind of funny to think that Hitler would declare war on America. But Pearl Harbor brings America into the war, and that's why you have that Roosevelt speech at this point. But as far as the European theater, winter, again, sometimes there isn't much fighting because there need to be better conditions for war. But what you'll see here soon is you'll have the south of, in the south here, the Nazis will start trying to take out the Caucasus because they're going for the oil there. And there's a famous decision that Hitler makes where he's overconfident and doesn't send as many troops to Stalingrad and wants to swerve south. And then, of course, the Germans get bogged down in Stalingrad, which you'll see here in a minute.
Will live in infamy.
I don't know if he timed this intentionally, but the music kind of picks up again when the Nazis start invading even more here in a second. And there they go. And here's the music. And this is when the decision made where Hitler goes south. He's trying to he doesn't quite make it to the Black Sea there. And then the Nazis are also at the gates of Stalingrad here. And there's a crazy battle. Most people point to it as the turning point in the war, where the Russians hold Stalingrad. It's a huge deal. Goering who's Hermann Goering, who is a German, one of the lead Nazis, boastfully proclaims that the Luftwaffe will be able to get supplies to Germans here, and it fails. And Stalingrad, the Battle of Stalingrad, goes to the Russians eventually. The whole thing turns around here in a second. See, there it is. Russians start their counterattack, and next thing you know, the Germans are on the defensive, and that's pretty much the turning point of the war. It's from this point on, the Germans will only be on the defensive. there's especially after the British and the Americans land in D-Day, which is about a year from now. This is June of 43. It'll be June of 44. And you can see also down here in Sicily, this is famously General Patton in America as one of the most interesting generals. He kind of helps lead the way here in Sicily in the Sicily campaign that allows them to keep on the Allies to keep pushing up through Italy after they had taken out Northern Africa. And I missed all that. Like I said, there's so much to catch. And there go the Allies up through Italy. And that kind of flashed red you could see in Italy, and that was, I'm pretty sure I got this right, that was because the Nazis basically took over all of the Italian campaign. In turn, domestically, Italy had a lot of problems at this point. Hitler wasn't going to give up Italy yet, though, so he sent troops there to try to repel the attack, the Ally invasion of Italy. It's kind of the slow marched counterattack now, where Russia slowly is working its way back across all that territory that the Nazis had gained, and they'll march their way all the way to Berlin. And pretty soon here, the Americans and the British will hit land at D-Day and march their way all the way to Berlin as well. And the Russians and the French and the British and the Americans will all meet in the middle of Germany. See, you can see D-Day just happened in June, and now their Allies are slowly making progress through France. And that's also see how fast the Allies went through France there? That was a lot because of Patton. Just as he had done in Sicily, he now is doing in France. He had his own issues to deal with, but where he was kind of sidelined from the war for a little bit because of some things he had done, but here he is put back in action. He just blows his way through France. And they're right on the gates of Germany, you can see. There's going to be the Battle of the Bulge here in a second, where Hitler has one last thrust, one last attempt to take out the Western Front. You'll see it here, it just looks like a little dot. In reality, it was this really big battle that the Allies are victorious in, though. That'll be in December. Yep, here really soon, the Battle of the Bulge. There it is, you can see it. It's just that right in the Western Front of Germany, and the Allies repel it. And next thing you know, the Russians are right at Berlin's door. And Hitler goes into his bunker and eventually shoots himself while the Allies win the war. There's going to be a famous meeting where the blues touch each other in the middle of Germany. The famous meeting between Russia and, there it is, Germany surrenders. And there's, yep, the famous picture of the Soviet flag in Berlin. And there is Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill. Yeah, just, man, I never get tired of watching that. There's so much there that I always miss, and again, the music and all that really goes well together. But thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, or you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.